I'm Laura, and I'm 31 years old. I used to live with my parents and my older sister, Mary, but she moved out 3 years ago after she got married. I work from home running an online business. I first got interested in making apps when I was in middle school after my grandfather gave me a computer for my birthday. It turned out to be a big success for me. But sadly, my grandfather passed away 4 years ago. He lived with us, and he was the only person I felt truly close to. After he died, I became more withdrawn. My parents work during the day, and I spend most of my time alone, quietly working. They don't really understand what I do. They just think I'm playing games all day. My sister, Mary, also looks down on me. Growing up, my parents always favored her, and I was often ignored. My interest in computers grew because I felt left out by my family. My grandparents were the only ones who truly cared for me and spent time with me. When I turned 15, they gave me a computer, which led to my current career. My parents have never given me a birthday gift, so this meant a lot to me. Now that both of my grandparents are gone, my room feels like the only place I belong in this house. Even though my parents have their flaws, I don't hate them. They raised me, so I try to help around the house as much as I can. One Thursday morning, my mom suddenly opened my door and asked, "Laura, is breakfast ready?" It was past 8 a.m. "Yes, it's on the table," I replied. Since my grandfather passed away, I've been doing most of the chores around the house. My parents just assume it's natural for me to take care of everything since they think I'm always playing games. I prepare all the meals, clean, do the laundry, and handle the shopping. "Oh, did you see your dad? He had breakfast early and left," Mom added. "Dad's gone out again, huh?" I replied. "Lately, Dad has been leaving early on weekends. My parents don't really fight, but Dad usually can't say no to Mom, so he probably leaves early to escape the busy schedule she plans for him. We haven't really talked since I was in middle school, so this is just what I think. Mary and her family will visit around noon today," Mom mentioned. "Mary's coming?" I asked, a bit surprised. "Don't be so shocked. She's your sister after all. It's been a while since you've seen each other, hasn't it?" "Yeah, it's definitely been a while. I think this is the first time she's been home since she got married," I said. Even though Mary got married 3 years ago, and she's gone out to eat with Mom and Dad, she hasn't visited our house until now. When Mary was pregnant, she didn't come home. Our parents went to visit her instead. I figured something important must be going on for her to come now. She wouldn't come without a reason, right? I thought to myself, yeah, she mentioned she has something to talk about. Since she's coming after so long, make sure to prepare a nice lunch, my mom said. Got it, I replied, even though I felt a bit uneasy. I was excited to meet my nephew, but Mary had always been cold toward me in the past. I realized I hadn't gotten this month's grocery money yet, so I asked, "Mom, can I get this month's food money? I'm about to go shopping." "Didn't you get it from your father?" she replied.
"He told me to ask you," I said.
She frowned. "I don't have much on me. Last month, I only gave you $100. Here's $50. She slapped the money on the table. "But I need the full amount this month," I said. "If you worked properly, you wouldn't have these issues." "How long are you going to keep wasting time?" she snapped. "I told you, I am working," I tried to explain. "I don't want to hear excuses. You're just playing games for pocket money. Don't talk about working when you can't even live on your own," she said harshly. "That's not true," I insisted. "Enough. I've given you some money. Get the rest from your father," she said, storming out and slamming the door behind her. After a deep sigh, I went back to my work. Once I found a good stopping point, I went out to do the shopping. I felt uneasy the whole time, so I rushed to finish by early afternoon since Mary was supposed to arrive around then. When I got back home, I started cooking right away while my mom relaxed, watching TV. My dad returned just before noon, and soon after, the doorbell rang. "Glad you could come, Mary. Come on in." Mom's cheerful voice filled the house. "I'm back. It feels nostalgic being here after so long," Mary said as she stepped inside. "Welcome back, Mary."
"It's been a while," I said.
"Oh, Laura, you're still here," she replied, glancing at me. It was my first time seeing Mary in a long while, and she was dressed head to toe in designer brands with heavier makeup than before. She wore a confident smile as she looked at me, just as she always did. "I'm so tired," Mary said, collapsing onto the sofa. I looked around, hoping to see my nephew, and finally spotted my mom holding him. He looked around with wide, curious eyes, which made him even cuter. "What are you staring at?" "Hurry up and get lunch ready," Mom said coldly when she noticed me watching my nephew. "Mom, are you still making Laura do all the housework?" Mary asked in a mocking tone. "Of course. She's just in her room playing games all day, so she might as well be useful," Mom replied. "That's true. She costs money just by being here," Mary added with a smile, and they both continued their cheerful conversation. I tried to have a normal conversation with Mary, asking her about her married life. "How's married life, Mary?" "It must be tough with taking care of a child and doing housework," I said, choosing my words carefully. She replied, "I don't do any housework. I hate the thought of having to do chores every day like you do." "What do you mean?" I asked, surprised. "We have a housekeeper, so I don't have to do anything," she said with a smug smile. I remembered that Mary's husband is a doctor. When they got engaged, Mom and Mary were thrilled. She was marrying someone wealthy. "Wow, having a housekeeper must be nice. Is your husband busy with work?" I asked. "Yes, he is. He's hardly home, even on his days off, because he often gets emergency calls." Despite our differences, it felt nice to have a somewhat friendly conversation. But then Mary's tone changed. "You have such an easy life. Do you even know how hard our parents work?" she said, stopping me as I was about to finish preparing the meal. What are you talking about?" I replied, confused. "You're still pretending to work, aren't you? At your age, you should understand that because you're not independent, Mom has to work harder," she said sharply. "I've told you and Mom many times, I work from home and make enough to support myself. You don't have to worry," I explained. "If that's true, then move out and live on your own. You say you're earning money, but it's probably just pocket change, right? You've never had to struggle like Mom," she said, not believing a word I said. To her, I was just freeloading off our parents, unable to be independent. "I stay in this house because it belonged to Grandpa and Grandma. This place has so many precious memories for me," I replied. "I can't believe you're still hanging around here for that reason." "If it were me, I wouldn't want to stay in such an old house," she said. "The house is old, but we renovated it for Grandpa, with changes to make it easier for him to get around. The kitchen and bathroom were remodeled, and we have newer appliances, so I don't feel like it's inconvenient." Our grandparents loved Mary too, but maybe she felt annoyed by their ways, so she has no attachment to this place. For someone like me, marrying into wealth was the best choice, but that's impossible for you, Mary added, and Mom laughed along with her. "You can't get married, you can't show us any grandkids, and you won't even live on your own. You're really useless," Mom said. "I don't think marriage is everything. I make my own money, and I'm okay with that," I said, trying to stay calm. "Stop saying that and quit lying already. Dad, Mom, and I are all tired of your lies," Mary said coldly. Just then, my nephew started crying, and Mom shot me an angry look. I avoided her gaze and went back to the kitchen, frustrated, to finish preparing lunch in silence. I realized that trying to explain anything more to Mary or Mom would be pointless. Even though Mary criticized me, she still ate everything I'd cooked. I'd heard she had something important to talk about, but by the time she left that evening, she hadn't mentioned anything. However, I noticed something strange about her behavior. She kept checking different areas around the house, like the upstairs rooms, bathroom, and kitchen. Since she moved out, we had been gradually remodeling these spaces, and her detailed inspection seemed odd. But she left without saying anything, and I wondered when we'd see each other next. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Mom spoke up. "Make sure the house is clean by next Thursday and prepare a nice dinner. Mary, James, and the kids are coming. They just visited yesterday." "Why are they coming again? And why is her husband coming too?" I asked, surprised. "It's nothing to be so shocked about. Mary said they have something important to discuss, and there's something for you too, so keep your schedule open." "I'm just happy I'll get to see the kids again," Mom replied. I felt uneasy. Mary hadn't visited once since she got married, and now, suddenly, she was coming again so soon, and this time with her husband. I couldn't figure out what her real intentions were, but it didn't feel right. What I didn't know was that Mary and Mom were already having discussions about me. Can you believe the house is in Laura's name? What was Dad thinking? Mary asked. Don't worry. If we make Laura feel like she's a burden to everyone, she'll leave. The right to live here should be ours, Mom replied. I got so busy with work that Thursday came before I knew it. The last time I saw Mary's husband, James, was when he came to introduce himself before their wedding. He had decided to become a doctor because of his father. Though he was handsome, there was something cold about him. Mom was thrilled when she found out he was a doctor's son, and she welcomed him warmly. But since then, James hadn't visited, and none of us had seen him until now. When Mary, James, and my nephew arrived, I had already set dinner on the table. James looked like he had lost some weight since I'd last seen him 3 years ago. As I returned to the kitchen, Mary followed me. Did you pick up these side dishes from a supermarket? She asked. I wonder if this food will be good enough for us since we're used to high-quality meals, Mary commented, looking down on the dishes. This is a dish Grandma taught me how to make, so I know it's good, I replied calmly. Mary looked annoyed for a moment but quickly covered it up, putting on a smile as she started serving the food. During dinner, she mostly bragged about her child, going on about how he was better than other kids. James barely said a word, staying distant and only half listening to her stories. As she continued, Mary gave me a nasty look and said, seeing our adorable child, don't you wish you had another grandchild, Mom? Yes, we could have had more grandchildren by now, but that's impossible since Laura's not even married, Mom said, glancing at me. Before thinking about kids, you need to find someone to marry first. But how could you meet anyone when you're always in your room playing games? And you're still living here without a job, Mary added, piling on the insults. I finished my meal quietly and was about to leave the table when Mom stopped me, her voice filled with anger. Are you just going to walk away? We're not done. There's something important we need to talk about, so sit down and listen. Let's get to the point, Laura. Can you please leave this house? Mary said suddenly, leaving me in shock. You should try living on your own for once. Both Mom and Dad are tired of living with you. If you stay here, you'll never change, she continued, sounding like she was doing me a favor by advising me to move out. You need to realize how much of a disappointment you are, Mary added. It would be good for you to learn to earn enough to live on your own and understand how hard life can be. Wait, Mom. How many times do I have to say I'm working and making my own money? When will you believe me? I replied, my hands shaking with anger. Just because you make a little money from your hobbies doesn't mean you're earning a real living, Mom scoffed. No, I earn enough to pay for my own expenses. I even paid for all the house renovations after Grandpa passed away, I said firmly. I had used my savings to fund the renovations, and my parents knew I had covered every payment. Mary smirked. Oh, you think you're something, don't you? That money was Grandpa's, wasn't it? Don't act like I didn't know. He gave you money before he passed away, right? Grandpa had given me a bank book shortly before he died, a result of him and Grandma saving up, worried about my future since they saw how neglected I was. They must have hoped it would help me someday. How do you even know about that? I asked, stunned. As soon as Grandpa gave me the bank book, I had stored it away in a drawer and told no one about it. It was easy to find. I saw it in your drawer, Mary sneered. But where's the cash card? I couldn't take out any money. How could you do something like that? That's terrible, I said, shocked by her actions. They were always kinder to you, she continued. But to think they left money just for you, ignoring the rest of us, that's so unfair. Don't disrespect Grandpa and Grandma like that. I replied angrily. They saved that money because they cared about me. At that moment, I realized why my parents had never brought up the renovation payments. They must have known about the bank book all along and expected me to use it to cover the costs. They assumed I'd use the money from that account to pay for everything. Let's leave the money aside for now. At least the house has good amenities and new appliances, thanks to it, Mary said dismissively. I hate that you got it all, but I'll let it go. Grandpa and Grandma probably knew you'd never become independent, she added with a mocking look. Was her recent inspection of the house meant to check on these upgrades? As your sister, I'm really worried about you, you know, she said, feigning concern. I just glared at her. Ignoring my look, she finally got to her main point. Actually, James is about to start a new hospital, she said proudly, looking at him, though he kept a serious face.
What?
I asked, caught off guard. We're planning to move here too, she continued. James wants to build a hospital nearby. There's plenty of open land and not many hospitals around, so we'd use this house as our base. That's why we need you to move out, Mary stated matter-of-factly. But you can't just demand that out of nowhere. I protested. I know the house is in your name, but you should hand it over for Mom and Dad's sake. Just let me have it, she insisted. Why do you get to decide that? Of course, Mom and Dad agree with me, she said confidently. They want you out too. I remembered that Grandpa had transferred the house into my name before he passed away. At first, I didn't understand why Grandpa had put the house in my name, but now it made sense. Mary said, Dad's the real head of this house. Your name on the papers doesn't matter, so just leave quietly.
No.
This house is full of memories of Grandma and Grandpa, I replied. Stop being so childish, she snapped. You're just a parasite here, making things harder for everyone. It's time for you to go, Mary shouted like she was delivering the final blow. Laura, don't you think you're a bad influence on your nephew? My mother added, turning to me. Do you really want him to grow up seeing you depend on us for everything? During all this, my father kept looking down, distracted by his phone, and James just sat silently listening. At that moment, I realized they wouldn't listen to anything I said. I needed to get out of this toxic place.
Fine.
Do whatever you want, I said, heading to my room. I was furious, but I forced myself to think calmly about my next steps. That night, I made a decision. The next morning, after Mary's family left, I went downstairs to find the house still messy from the night before. My parents were still asleep. I grabbed my laptop and went to a nearby cafe to plan. Soon, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from my mother, demanding I come back to make breakfast. I ignored them and focused on my plan. I looked up moving companies and was able to schedule one for the same day. I timed my return to the house when I knew my parents would be at work. The house was a mess after just a few hours without me, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and relief. Shortly after, the movers arrived with a truck. Which items are we taking? One of the movers asked. Everything I bought, I replied. The movers quickly packed up all my belongings, appliances like the washing machine, fridge, and microwave, along with smaller items like dishes. After they were done, the house felt empty and strangely sad. Legally, this house was still mine, but I no longer wanted to be here. As I left, I felt a sense of freedom and knew I wasn't wasting my grandparents' love and care. That evening, my mother called, furious. What's going on? All the appliances are gone. Did you take them? Of course I did, I answered. You wanted me out, so I'm leaving. And I'm taking what I bought with me. I'm glad you're leaving, but it's not right to take the appliances, my mother said. Why not? They're mine. I bought them. You bought them with Grandpa's money?
No.
How many times do I have to say it? The money from Grandpa is very important to me. I wouldn't touch it. I bought everything with my own money. I sent her a picture of my bank book showing today's date to prove it. I had just withdrawn $170, so the balance should have been clear. You're horrible to do this to your own parents.
Fine.
We don't need your appliances. We'll ask Mary and her family for help. I don't care, but you all need to leave quickly. That house is in my name. Don't be ridiculous. That was the last I heard from my mother. Inside, I hoped James could buy the house, not just the appliances. A few days later, Mary contacted me sooner than I expected. Laura, I hope you've calmed down now. Can we talk just one more time, please? Her tone sounded different, as if she was being careful. What do you want? I'm busy with work. Make it quick. I've been thinking. It was a mistake to try to kick you out. We're family. Shouldn't we live together? After calling me a parasite, now you want to talk about families? Absolutely not. You guys have moved in already, haven't you? Yes, we moved in yesterday, but there have been some problems. Oh, about James. He got fired from the hospital, right? I know. It's amazing you kept quiet about it. How do you know that? I'm not as clueless as you think. A friend of mine works in admin at the hospital James was at. She told me he was fired for having an affair. It turns out that James had an affair with a nurse and got her pregnant. He tried to convince her not to have the baby to keep the affair a secret, but the angry woman exposed everything at the hospital. Fearing for the hospital's reputation, James's father decided to fire him. James couldn't tell Mary the truth, so he made up a story about building a new hospital to have a place to live. I just found out about it recently and was shocked. Now he has no money and is being sued for compensation by the woman's husband. Plus, Dad has left home. What happened to Dad? According to Mary, it seems my father also had an affair. He left a note and divorce papers before moving out, right before Mary and her family were supposed to move in. Apparently, he wrote complaints about my mother in the note, and after reading it, my mother became bedridden. You can't just leave us in this situation. Right, Laura? You'll help us, won't you? You still have the money Grandpa gave you, right? What are you saying now? I asked, and my mother showed me the photo of the bank book. After all this time of not believing I could support myself, it's funny how they finally believe I'm working, just when it suits them. You can't rely on me only when it's convenient. I'm not coming back. I put up with everything because that house held Grandma and Grandpa's memories, but now I realize those memories will always be with me. Wait, please, Mary begged. I don't have any good memories with you, Mom or Dad, so asking for my help now doesn't feel right. And remember, the house is in my name, so you'll need to move out soon. Saying all this out loud made my heart feel lighter, and I knew I could now find real happiness. Please, Laura, you're really going to abandon your family like this? I didn't respond to any more calls or messages from my mom or Mary. For the first 4 months, they kept trying, but they eventually gave up, and now my days are peaceful. I heard that Mary and James opened a hospital with borrowed money, but no patients come. Probably because James's affair partner has been spreading bad rumors. My mom developed depression from the shock of my dad leaving and is now in the hospital. When I moved out, I decided to sell the house, and I went through with it. Seeing the for sale notice, Mary and her family had no choice but to move into a nearby apartment. With debts and no patients, they're struggling, but that's no longer my concern. I do hope my nephew finds happiness. He's innocent in all this. As for me, my work is going well, and I'm even expanding my business. I'm grateful to my grandparents, and I hope to someday find a place where I truly belong. I'm determined to keep living my life to the fullest.